Good evening, everybody. We are almost ready to go. We have a special edition tonight of the Wednesday Warrior Weekly Randomizer race for you here. And you're seeing 4 of the runners. We have many more off stream. It's going to be a super speed run tonight where we have the vanilla map for all of us to enjoy, and many of the features will not be randomized. So we will not be shuffling chests and search items tonight. We will not have randomized weapon shops, or randomized stat growth, or randomized spell learning, or randomized enemy attacks or enemy zones, but we will have some of the features of Randomizer. The mechanics will be intact. Some of the gold chests that you'll see will still contain 500 to 750 gold pieces each. You'll see as they're underway, everything will look a bit vanilla and non-randomized. We're going to see a torch and some gold. That particular gold still has the original 120 gold from the original vanilla game, and you'll see their statistics are in line with what you would normally see. So how are they going to proceed through the game? There are going to be a few strategic changes to how you'd normally play, particularly the 4 treasure chests that are in the treasury in Tantegel are all going to have a massive amount of gold. So it seems to me that one of the strategies might be to make a mad dash for Rimildar, maybe around level 7 or so upon obtaining the sleep spell. Make a dash for it, buy a couple of keys, and then you can open the treasury a few times, quickly obtaining about 10 grand, go back to Rimildar and buy some equipment. But in between, we're going to need to get a little stronger. So what equipment are they all going to buy with the starting gold of 120? We'll see. We have some options as we did in the original game. We can get the club and the clothes. We can get the club and wait and get the leather armor. So they've all sort of made their choices, and they're looking around for slimes and red slimes. I believe the initial zones here are not lowered in terms of the encounter rate as they are in the vanilla game. We have the regular encounter rate that you would find in the randomizer, and so we're off and running, finding slimes and red slimes. They are going to be leveling up quickly because they are on a setting where they are going to need only half as much experience points as you would need in the original game for each and every level. So you see BT already with only 6 experience points is already on level 2. Along with Tilo and Mr. Holmes now with only 4 experience points. So now what's the strategy? When do you make a dash for Garenham? Are you going to try for a hand axe at some point? Are you going to go into the mountain cave? Or are you going to skip the mountain cave? We know that the mountain cave contains the fighter's ring and the death necklace. The ending level that they'll be approaching is right around where the death necklace may become useful. Depends on which level they want to risk going for the end game. So we got a lot to look forward to today. It's going to be fun to see how they progress through this non-randomized seed. So we see an early level for BT. Early experience lead, level 3, and we should see the same stat growth that you'd normally see. And I predict that he maybe probably just learned the heal spell at level 3. If since the spell progression is not going to be randomized, we'll have heal at level 3, we'll have the hurt spell at level 4, the sleep spell at level 7. See how they want to take advantage of those progressions as we move through here. And we see BT taking the 90 gold, and he's going to go with the leather armor instead of the small shield here. I believe the leather armor has a little bit better defensive boost than the small shield. So he grabs the slightly cheaper leather armor. And he's back at it, fighting more red slimes. So they all have kind of a similar approach, although BT is starting to venture out, maybe looking into those next zones where you might start finding some Drakies and ghosts. With the heal spell, he should be able to fight a ghost pretty well right now. He's got the club at his disposal, according to our tracker. Game Boy in chat will clarify exactly what is like the randomizer and what is like the vanilla game. We're going to have the experience in gold that's dropped by the enemies is also going to be updated to randomizer values, so we'll be gaining experience in gold more quickly than in the vanilla game, and also less experience will be required to proceed through the game. And so a lot of the strategy as we move through is, what are they going to do about gaining gold, and are they going to skip certain equipment? Are they going to buy the silver shield? Are they going to skip the silver shield? I'm trying to think if you could maybe skip Caitlyn entirely. There's a possibility for diving into Sharlock for an early Erdrick sword. So lots of possibilities as we move along here. And BT is on level 4, and with level 4 and a trip to the inn and refreshing the MP, we're going to have access to the hurt spell now. So he could go out and fight some ghosts and magicians pretty comfortably at this point. And Mr. Holmes, we see, is doing just that, fighting a ghost on level 4. He's almost out of resources, so he'll be taking a trip home soon. So I'm going to have a lot of similar styles early on. A big difference is going to be when they start making a break for it towards Rimuldar. And I predict upon reaching level 7, we're going to start seeing some mad dashes in that direction. And the people that survive that trip are going to have a distinct advantage over those who take a death en route. So that will be the exciting moments, which we'll probably be getting to within the next 5 minutes or so. We have the game audio by BT, and he's taking advantage of, in the vanilla game, this very bottom row of hills is a slightly stronger zone than the rest of the hills, which typically you'd only find slimes and red slimes. This bottom hill zone here is a different zone that does contain some of these scorpions and magidrakes, which can be killed pretty well with the hurt spell. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the hurt spell is buffed in this particular race to do as much damage as you would see in Randomizer. As we see there, he's doing 15 damage with the hurt spell. Normally in the vanilla game, you would not be able to do quite that much damage with the hurt spell. So the magidrakes and the scorpions really are in the sweet spot now in levels 4, 5, and 6. So he's picked a really nice zone to get these few levels, and I think we're seeing the same strategy now from Tilo Tilo. The hill tiles, of course, also have the advantage of the highest encounter rate available, along with desert tiles. So that's a nice little strategy to hang out in that bottom row of hills, trying to look for more scorpions and magidrakes. And Zarnax42 is the first to start making a dash for it. And he is only on level 5, and I wonder if he is going to attempt to go all the way to Rimuldar on this small level up here. So maybe thinking of getting a couple of levels along the way, you'll start running into more magidrakes and scorpions and possibly even skeletons as you get over towards the Coal region. He might take a quick in stop at Coal, grabbing levels 6 and 7 quickly, and then he's already halfway towards Rimuldar. So see a little bit of a strategy difference on X42 trying to take advantage of walking halfway there. And Mr. Holmes has decided that this desert with Drakies and Ghosts are the way to go. BT is going to upgrade some weapons again. He's going to go up to the Copper Sword, and that will enable him to probably do enough melee damage so that the hurt spell is no longer necessary against magicians and scorpions. He can save some precious MP for the heal spell. And so we'll see if he can take advantage of that. And Mr. Holmes is deciding that he wants to grab a couple of herbs in Garanham before taking an inn over in this direction. So we have a few different ideas, and as noted, Zarnax is going towards the Swamp Cave for an early trip over to Rimuldar. This is quite difficult at these levels to survive this trip, particularly once you get to the other side. You'll be in some zones that contain warlocks, wolves, metal scorpions, all of which could easily ambush our runners when they're only on levels 5 and 6. We have fairly low agility scores still on those levels. I believe that if they are all going with the strength HP build, they're only going to have somewhere around 10 agility on level 5, which we see from Zarnak. So you're easily going to get ambushed by some of these enemies on the other side, but he's going to risk it. And he's on the other side now, and we see that Tilo and Mr. Holmes are starting to go in that direction as well. So, as predicted, right around level 7, and they're actually going for it a little bit earlier than I would have thought. And now with that victory, Zarnax does make it to level 6, but he is getting pretty low on resources. With that heal spell, he's only got 4 more MP, and he has a pretty long walk through some treacherous terrain here to try and reach Rimuldar with enough gold to buy at least 2 keys. You're going to want a couple of keys when you get there, because you're going to want to be able to invade the Tantegel treasury, and he's almost there. If he can avoid being ambushed by a wolf, here's a skeleton, probably the weakest enemy in the region, which is great if he can run, and he does manage to run on a pretty low agility score, and he makes it! So this is a huge advantage for Zarnax 42. He's made it on his first attempt at low level to the town of Rimuldar with enough gold to buy 3 or maybe 4 keys, and he'll probably immediately take a death warp and head back to the Tantegel treasury to raid what I predict is going to be about 10,000 in gold. I'm not sure if he'll go all the way for the magic armor or if he'll go for just full plate money. There's a broadsword and a magic armor for sale in Rimuldar. There's a large shield available in the town of Garenham. He could very quickly just do what we call it like a slow grind, just going in and out of Tantegel castle, respawning the treasure chests, buying extra keys in the key shop if necessary, accumulate about 10,000 in gold. Remember, each of those gold chests in the treasury has between 500 and 750 gold in this version of the game. So this would be a pretty big strategy difference from a normal vanilla speedrun, and well, he's going to exit without doing what I thought he would do there. Let's see what he has in mind next. Meanwhile, I think BT is content to grind up to level 7 before making his dash. And Tilo looks like he may have taken a death, although I didn't catch it. And Mr. Holmes finally reaches level 6. He seems to be behind experience-wise. And BT now has reached level 7. With level 7 you get the sleep spell, so you can do a little bit of the sleep run tactics against a lot of those enemies on the other side, such as the warlock, the skeleton, the wolf. But no, he's content to grind more levels here, which actually kind of surprises me. The faster you can get to Rimuldar and get some keys, the faster you can get some money together to buy some really powerful equipment and progress with that grind that much faster. Mr. Holmes is going to go for it on level 6, and he did buy some herbs for this reason, to be able to conserve some MP by healing up with the herbs when necessary. So that's an interesting strategy, using some of the precious early money on a couple of herbs for this trip through. And if this is not successful, if he takes a death, that's a lot of resources drained. He's on the other side. And yeah, and I'm shocked now that Zarnax has not gone for the gold in the treasury. Instead, he is going towards Mountain Cave, potentially going for the Death Necklace and the Fighter's Ring. So that's an interesting development. And that's one of the things that I'm not so sure the Mountain Cave is even going to be required in this race. The Fighter's Ring and the Death Necklace are all that you'd find in there. And it's not that clear if either one of those items are needed. They both come into play on the last level or so. Either I would say levels 18 or 19 are going to be the go time levels in this one. And Holmes does make it, so he is going to buy a couple of keys. And let's see if he takes the Death Warp and raids the treasury. And BT has decided that he is not going to go too much further. Level 7 is good, and he's going for it. Tilo is making his run for Rimuldar. So similar ideas, but at slightly different times in their progression. And Zarnax did have the early lead, but now he's going to work his way through the mountain cave with very little equipment. In fact, it looks like, according to our tracker, he may have no equipment. So Mr. Holmes does take the death, does not go into the treasury. Well, I suppose if I was running this game in this race, I would be doing different things, and maybe I'd be doing the wrong things. I'm not sure. So I've been surprised already. Mr. Holmes has something in mind. I think he's going back to the town of Garenham immediately. No, he's going to take a turn for the mountain cave. Okay. And Tilo runs into a wolf just a few steps away, but he does have the sleep spell, reaching level 7 prior to reaching this point, and he's going to take a crack at the wolf anyways. And he's going to risk dying just a couple of steps away from Rimuldar, unless he's already been in there and I've missed it. So a triple hurt attack on the wolf to pick up some nice experience points. You can see 40 experience and 60 gold, and he is entering Rimuldar now, so he had not gotten keys. So that was a little bit of a gamble trying to attack that wolf. But it paid off with some extra experience. Now he's going to go grab the keys. Maybe he needed the gold in order to buy more keys. I didn't catch how much gold he had. You want at least a couple of keys here. And BT is... let's see, he's fighting a Druin. I think he's going through Swamp Cave. And Zarnax has taken a death in the Mountain Cave. So perhaps the idea was to go into the Mountain Cave in order to set up a more traditional gold grind where you can take these chests as much as you want. And you can see that he's going to open some of the chests, and when he gets to the end, if he has opened at least 2 chests in the Mountain Cave, he'll trigger the gold grind glitch and he'll get as much gold as he wants. I kind of felt like going all the way to Mountain Cave to do this was not necessary. I think you could have just come in and out of this castle 3 or 4 times on a slow grind and gotten the 10,000 gold that you needed, but that is the difference here. We have a few different strategies. Mr. Holmes is making his way through Mountain Cave as well. Be interested to see if anyone decides to sell the Death Necklace. I don't believe they will, since it may come into play on the end game. Zarnax is going to refresh keys. And he knows exactly what is in the basement here. It should be the Stones of Sunlight Cave with the Stones of Sunlight. So is now the time to take care of that errand. He is on his way back there. Lo and behold, it's the Stones of Sunlight Cave, and he's going to open the chest. It's the bamboo pole. I'm going to take a good guess and say that that was the Stones of Sunlight acquired for Zarnax 42. The first quest item obtained by any of our runners on screen. And BT has also made it to the town of Rimuldar. He's making a mad dash for the key shop, while Tilo also makes a run for the Mountain Cave. And it looks like he also has the same idea of clearing out Mountain Cave, getting the Fighter's Ring and the Death Necklace, and setting up the traditional gold grind that way. So we actually have pretty similar strategies by everyone on screen right now. Zarnax just seems to be a little bit ahead of the game. He's already taken care of all of those errands, and he's on his way back towards Cole. He may or may not check the search spot for the Fairy Flute. And if he gets just another level or 2, I expect him to maybe go back over to the Rimuldar region to grind some enemies. Probably going to grind up until around level 12 or so, at which point we could take a run through Garenham's grave. Fresh with the outside spell at level 12, you could go through there, or you could take a Death Warp in there as usual. Grab the Harp. At some point you're going to want to take care of those errands, and then decide if you want to make a run for Cantlin. But for now, upgrading to the Hand Axe. He's got a whole bunch of gold acquired earlier. So Hand Axe full plate for Zarnax 42. With some gold to spare. And Tilo is going to find in this treasure chest here the Fighter's Ring. And he immediately equips the Fighter's Ring. And he will take a run for the Death Necklace chest. The enemies in here do seem to be weak enough that they are able to get through here with these resources for the most part. So Zarnax walked all the way around, perhaps buying some wings maybe. That's one reason why you might come to this particular item shop, depending on how you want to do your routing. Instead of taking Death Warps, if you're in the middle of grinding for some gold, then you might want to save some of that gold and purchase some wings. He's getting all sorts of items, including a full stock of herbs as well. So Tilo a few steps away from the Death Necklace chest. Just a handful of magic points left at his disposal. BT fighting a Warlock outside of the Rimuldar region. Seems to be doing his grind right away. Now that he is in the area, he's going to stick with the wolves. And unfortunately, he takes a death from that wolf. May or may not have been planned. Back to the castle he goes with half of his gold. And Mr. Holmes just acquired the Fairy Flute, I believe, in the town of Cole. And he has over 10,000 gold at his disposal. He's going to do some quick upgrades to the small shield. And probably taking the rest of it over to Rimuldar, probably targeting the broadsword and the magic armor purchases. With a little bit left over in case he makes his way back to Garenham later on for the large shield. I've been thinking about this particular part of the game and whether or not it makes any sense to take a walk over to Garenham and pick up the large shield first before trying to make this second run back over to Rimuldar to pick up the broadsword and the magic armor, because you'll just be, if you had the large shield, you would be defense breaking some of these Rimuldar enemies just a little bit faster. If you can defense break the wolf, all of a sudden that becomes just a really much more efficient grind for that particular level, and then you can move on to the Wolf Lord and the Wraith and so on. So I don't know, none of them seem to have bothered to do that. It's a little bit of a trip out of the way, and if you happen to fail on this second run back to Rimuldar and you want to reset and save this gold, you know, having to walk over to Garenham to get the large shield every time you fail this walk here would be a little bit of a time loss, but seems like Mr. Holmes is making this walk look easy. It's not that easy to get there on level 7, but once again, he is about to make it with a whole lot of gold at his disposal. And Zarnax is also in here, and he upgrades to the broadsword, but not enough for the magic armor. I guess he decided that full plate is enough. After all, the full plate has the same defensive stats as the magic armor. The magic armor just has a couple of small bonuses in terms of what extra features it has that it can do for you. It has a little bit of hurt more resistance, a little bit of heal walking ability. But the full plate is fine for the most part, so Zarnax is sticking with that. He's going to be grinding in this small desert strip for metal scorpions and wolves. And Mr. Holmes has enough for the broadsword, which he purchases now, and he's going for the magic armor. So he's got the good stuff, and he has enough left over for the large shield. The trouble is, if you go all the way back now for the large shield, you've exited the really good grind region, which is this desert next to Rimuldar. So he's going to have to settle for having the small shield, having just a few less points. It looks like he's already defense breaking the wolf, though, because he did get the magic armor and the small shield. So, and the same would be true here for Zarnax on level 7 as well. So nice job by these runners. They're going to have an easy time of fighting through these wolves and probably just continuing to go back to the inn in Rimuldar, and they'll probably stay here for several more levels. You could also eventually go down to the southern regions where the Wyvern is down in the southern hills, along with the Wolf Lord and one or two other decent enemies. Unfortunately, the Goldman pops up down there, which is a little bit worthless unless you really want to grind for gold for some reason. But with randomizer treasure chests available, it's probably better to set up a gold grind glitch instead of relying on gold drops from enemies. And we see BT instead is going to go for the grave now, making a run through here, potentially for the silver harp, which is lying on the very bottom chest. And I don't even recall what's actually in these top 3 chests, and he may not even bother with them because we know for sure that there's no quest items up there. And yeah, he looks like he's going to skip those top chests entirely. He's going directly down to the bottom chest for the silver harp. So nice move there, and BT is on level 8 as he makes his way through. We have fairly easy to survive zones on these top couple of floors, but as he makes his way down towards the bottom, he'll probably run into some stronger enemies such as Wraith Knights and have a little bit more trouble, though he does have some decent defensive equipment, having gotten the half plate and the large shield along the way, which is a slightly different mix from what we saw from Zarnax and Mr. Holmes. But he should be okay with that, combined with heavy use of the sleep spell on a lot of his enemies. Should be able to make his way down. Now the Druid Lord here is pretty resistant to all the spells, so he's just going to try and run from the Druid Lord for now. Gets away in a second try, so a little bit of a divergence. I feel like if I was running this, I would be going a little bit more with the strategy that Mr. Holmes and Zarnax used. But that's the beauty of this. We'll have to see how this plays out as people start taking some different strategies here. Some different routing. BT just a couple of steps away from the Silver Harp. At that point, he will have 2 out of the 3 quest items in his possession. And in theory, if he already has the Silver Harp, he could swing by the Staff of Rain Cave en route to the Rimuldar region and get that task out of the way. So one more encounter to deal with. He makes it out of there alive. Silver Harp acquired. Probably going to intentionally take a Death Warp after maybe trying to grind a few enemies down here. They don't yet have the outside spell. Of course, you're not going to learn the outside spell until level 12. That's a long way back out of the grave. He doesn't have a whole lot of gold that he wants to hang on to anyways. So he'll try and get a couple of decent victories here, but if he takes a death, it's no big deal. Tilo has an extraordinary amount of gold in his possession right now. He's getting all the gold all at once, so I'm interested to see at what point he is going to take the mad dash for Cantlin, because he clearly has more equipment on his mind than the ones that are being sold in the town of Rimuldar. But first, he has to make it through the wolf fight alive. Fortunately, the heal spell has been buffed in Randomizer, so he can out-heal the damage with the heal spell. Would probably be unsuccessful doing that in the original game. And he manages to get away from the wolf. And we do have the Death Warp from BT back to the castle, so we'll keep an eye on whether or not he goes for the Staff of Rain. And Tilo has made it to the shop, picks up the magic armor and the broadsword, so he has similar equipment now to Mr. Holmes and Zarnax 42, who have been grinding in this region for the last several minutes. Zarnax with the experience lead, closing in on 800 experience. BT actually just slightly behind, even though he took a much different approach to this race. And if anyone is 100% sure whether or not BT ever actually equipped the Dragon Scale, we will make sure we note that as well. You never really know, and it's an easy thing for a runner to forget to do, so. And he is making his way in that direction, so I kind of feel like BT will stop at the Staff of Rain Cave, which is to the northwest of Cole in the original game, and then make his way to Rimuldar. Whereas the other runners will have to make this trip back to the east at some point in order to do this. Everyone will have to come this way anyways as soon as they eventually get the token, because in the southeastern regions to the south of Rimuldar, you're going to want to trade all of your items in for the rainbow drop eventually. So it's just a matter of how you want to route it out so that you can save a little bit of walking through some of these weaker zones. Of course, we're not going to learn the repel spell until level 15, so you're going to want to minimize a lot of these encounters with these red slimes at this point. So BT does make his way, and he is about to grab the Staff of Rain. Remember, we do have several runners racing off-stream at the same time. So we're all racing the same non-randomized seed here. But because of the differences that Randomizer provides, there will be some differences to what you would see in a normal vanilla speedrun. And so BT is going to head on over to the town of Cole. He has very close to full plate money in his possession. Probably going to try and grind that up. Full plate is available in the town of Cole. And we see Mr. Holmes jockeying himself around on the little desert next to Rimuldar. And at some point along the way, they're going to progress from this area down towards the south, where you can fight some wolf lords and wyverns. But they won't want to do that until they're defense breaking those enemies. Just makes the grind so much more efficient if you don't have to keep coming back to the inn to heal. So, and that's where I'm wondering if the lack of buying the large shield on the way is slowing both of these guys down slightly, and when they're able to progress to the next zone for grinding. But regardless, they are pretty much on the same strategy. Looks like Mr. Holmes is going to take a southward turn now upon reaching level 10. So let's see how his fights go with the Wraith and the Wolf Lord that are slightly to the south here in these hills. If he takes a significant amount of damage, he may revert back to fighting warlocks and wolves. If he finds that he is already defense breaking wolf lords and wraiths, then he'll probably remain down here. And at some point they do have a strategy in mind for when they want to attack the town of Cantlin. I believe that Zarnax and Mr. Holmes are probably going to go up towards around level 12 or 13 with this grind, and then they're going to do the grave to get the harp, at which point that will trigger another gold grind. They can grind up the money coming out of there, and then take that money directly to Cantlin. Whereas BT has already gone through and gotten the harp. And he is somebody that maybe has decided that Cantlin is just not even required. And it's possible that Cantlin could be skipped if you feel like you can win with the large shield instead of getting the silver shield. You might take a little bit more damage physically from Dragon Lord 2, but they may or may not be significant. And you could potentially skip the Flame Sword if you want to make an early dive into Sharlock and get the Erdrick Sword. So I'm kind of curious if BT has that type of strategy in mind. He is going into Mountain Cave now, though. So one of the reasons to do this now is to go ahead and set up a gold grind. But I was kind of wondering if BT was going to be avoiding any more gold grinding. But he's on his way through Mountain Cave now. And all that can be obtained in here is the Fighter's Ring and the Death Necklace, but those could come into play on the last level. And we are 35 minutes in, and 3 out of our 4 runners are pretty solidly in one of the grind phases. The one right next to Rimildar. And BT is making his way through the second of the 2 major dungeons. All of the other runners still do have to do the grave, and it's worth noting that Tilo is carrying around all of this gold while doing this grind. So if he somehow gets ambushed and put to sleep by a Warlock, for example, like he is right now, fortunately though, he is defense breaking the Warlock, so it's unlikely that it would do enough damage to him before he wakes up. So still a fairly safe grind for him. Just wants to make sure that he tops off on his HP, unless that, just in case that happens. But you can bet he's keeping an eye on that, and he has no intentions of taking any more deaths. There are some wings available in the town of Rimildar behind 2 locked doors if he wants to go ahead and use the wings to get himself back to Tantegel Castle instead of taking a Death Warp. At this point, a Death Warp would cost a tremendous amount of gold. So unless you have some plans on setting up another gold grind, you're probably going to want to find some other way to get back to Tantegel Castle. You can also buy some wings in the town of Cole. You don't learn the return spell in this game for quite a while. If I recall, it might be level 13. So that may be the other possibility, as that the runners will just wait until they learn the return spell before exiting this grind phase. So BT is taking some damage from the Drakima here, but he is intentionally taking a death, adjusting the Fighter's Ring, and he's on his way out. Looks like he already picked up the Death Necklace. He's taking 1 damage at a time, and he has finally taken the death that he's looking for. Gets out of the mountain cave. So it'll be interesting to see if he takes this opportunity to do a gold grind for himself. He already does have the hand axe and the full plate and the large shield, which isn't too shabby. But he is going for it. And I wonder if he has plans on taking an early trip over to Cantlin. Cantlin, I believe, is going to be guarded by the Golem. He does have possession of the Fairy Flute, and Golem, to my knowledge, will have the HP and various other stats that you would see in Randomizer, so beefed up HP total, probably upwards of around 150 hit points. So certainly not an easy fight with the hand axe and level 9 stats. And he is getting completely trolled by the guard. And if you talk to this guard, he says something like, brave heroes never steal, or something like that. So he's punishing BT for stealing all the gold out of the treasury. A little bit of time lost. He's going to take a safety save. And he has approximately enough gold for a flame sword right now, or he might use this gold for the broadsword and the magic armor. Time will tell which direction he goes from here. Mr. Holmes has found himself back in Tantegel, so I don't know if he took an unintentional death during his grind phase, or if he is on his way over to the grave to get the silver harp. And Zarnax is taking quite a bit of damage from the gold man. Remember, they don't have the heal more spell yet. That's not coming anytime soon. So you have to out heal enemies like this with the the heal spell or the herbs. So the Wolf Lord, he probably is defense breaking. Let's see. Yeah, well, I'm not sure. Took 12 damage right there from the Wolf Lord. And the Gold Man was packing a punch, so... Curious if that might be a little early to come down into this zone, if they should be continuing to fight the Wolf just a little bit longer, but he's going with the Wolf Lord grind. And Mr. Holmes is restocking up on herbs. And potentially going into Garen's grave now. He is in the town of Garenham. I would expect somewhere around this level for him to go and take care of that task, so... And a perfect opportunity to also upgrade to the large shield for Mr. Holmes, which again, you'll have the opportunity to defense break some of those Rimuldara enemies just a little bit earlier with the large shield as opposed to the small shield. It's an additional 6 defense power. So, just going to grab a couple of items and some gold from the back of Garenham, and he is heading down into the grave for the silver shield, for the silver harp. And BT is carrying around almost 10,000 in gold. And you can see Tilo Tilo has decided that level 11 is strong enough stats to go ahead and fight the Wyvern and, you know, basically the strongest enemies on this eastern region. And you can see that he is defense breaking the Wyvern with these level 11 statistics. He's probably going to have to go back to take an in-stop now. But that seemed to be the magic level to attempt that grind. And Zarnax all the way up to level 12 now, doing a similar grind. I don't know if the Wyvern appears in these particular hills to where he is grinding. He's sticking more with the Wolf Lord, the Metal Scorpion, and the Wraith. I think the Wyvern is a bit more to the south. So a slight difference in approaches from what Tilo Tilo was just doing. And Mr. Holmes is going into the grave. And BT has gotten himself some similar upgrades. Now has the broadsword and the magic armor as well, and he already had the large shield. So it's time for him to grind some Wyvern. And I think because of kind of the order in which he did some of these things, he has fallen significantly behind on the experience race, unfortunately. Zarnax 42 and Mr. Holmes up into the 2000s, while BT is just approaching 1,000 experience points. Now, he does have the harp, and they still have to take care of that errand, but I'm not sure that that's enough to make up for that gap. But he is beginning his grind phase, starting to sleep and attack the wolf, which he is defense breaking already on level 9 with this equipment. I didn't catch what happened with Mr. Holmes. I thought he was in the grave, but now he's out on the overworld. And what is going on? Is he actually making a run for Cantlin? This is a pretty early run for Cantlin, guys, and there are some really nasty enemies on the way. This is a good thing to watch here, because we see Zarnax is content, and Tilo Tilo also content to just continue grinding enemies at least until the return spell is learned, so that they can warp their way out of this region without losing their gold. Mr. Holmes, though, is going... So they're saying Mr. Holmes walked out after the top floor, did not go down for the harp. I am really not clear what would be the reason for Mr. Holmes to do that. Did not have magic keys. That would be a super unfortunate development for Mr. Holmes. Because you would have to walk all the way back to Rimuldar in this case to acquire more keys. And you can't even get the flame sword or the silver shield, I don't believe, without having a magic key either. So he's decided to just go into this grind zone west of Hawksness, which has the Wyvern, but it also has a couple of slightly stronger enemies than the Wyvern, I believe, if I recall. I don't think something as strong as the Knight. I can't totally remember what this zone is, but this particular one actually might be the same zone as the one that Tilo's grinding in, but then once he gets another level or two, he can just take like another step to the west or to the south and fight the next zone, which I think might be Knights and Wraith Knights and things like that. So, interesting play for Mr. Holmes to position himself over here. Remember, this town that he's next to is Hawksness, so there's no inn available for him to heal up, and he doesn't have the Heal More spell or anything like that. So once he runs out of resources, if he doesn't want to hold on to this gold, he's going to take a Death Warp, I guess, because it's a long walk back to an inn from here. And Tilo continues to fight in this same zone while Zarnax 42 seems to be avoiding the Wyvern. I believe that the zone he's in tops off at the Wolf Lord and the Wraith. It's a very close race between those three right now, experience-wise. At some point along the way, Mr. Holmes does have to go back into the basement to grab the stones out of the Tanteagle basement. Of course, he can't do that without magic keys as well, because you have to go through that door to get to the key shop and on to the basement. So if he really ran out of keys, that is a huge problem for Mr. Holmes, I think, in terms of routing. But for now, he's going to continue with the grind. And some level up music for BT, reaching level 11. He's going to stick with the Wolf Zone, maybe, or is he going to now continue for Wolf Lords and Wraiths now that he's on level 11? Looks like he's taking a northward turn, actually. Don't believe that there's any additional equipment anywhere in this region that he could buy. So we'll see what happens here. Tilo did, I believe, cast the return spell, right? Is this correct? He has level 13, so he probably returned, saved all that gold. Now he's doing a safety save. I predict that Tilo actually might take a run for Cantlin now. He does have the money for the Flame Sword and the Silver Shield on hand, and he is on level 13, which is right around the level where you would traditionally be able to survive the run to Cantlin. You'd have to run away from some Magiwyverns and potentially even some Star Wyvern along the way. It's not an easy run from here with these stats and these spells, but oftentimes this is about when you would go on a vanilla run. You take a run for Cantlin, so Tilo's going that direction. And do we have Mr. Holmes going towards the spike tile? It's extremely difficult to win this fight against the Axe Knight. Believe it's going to cast the sleep spell pretty often, and I don't recall, but he does block it. And I'm not sure, I apologize, but I'm not sure if this particular ROM has randomized stop spell resistance. Oh my goodness, and he has just obtained Erdrick's armor. That is incredible. What a move by Mr. Holmes. I did not see that coming. Amazing. That is a huge development. I did not think anyone would go for that until slightly later. Tilo, I don't think is going to do that until he unloads his burden of all this gold. He doesn't want to risk dying in that fight. So do we have randomized stop spell resistance for the Axe Knight? Because he landed that stop spell right away. And then proceeded to land an excellent move. Took him down. That was crazy. So Erdrick's Arm for Mr. Holmes. He's going to be able to heal walk himself during this grind, which means he is much less likely to ever need to go back to an inn now because he's defense breaking enemies like the Wyvern. And if you heal walk in between, that makes life a lot easier for this grind. So great move for Mr. Holmes. That could save a lot of trips back to the inn, a lot of time. And he does take one step down to try the next zone, which is the Wraith Knight and I forget what else is here. I think the Wraith Knight is going to, and the Knight can still do some damage to him. And the return spell is learned at level 13, question in chat. So I believe they all do have it. Not sure what Mr. Holmes has in mind right now, because he doesn't have enough gold on hand for the Flame Sword, but he is running towards Caitlin. And Tilo has gone across those bridges into the nasty zones. He's got werewolves that are ambushing. He's going to have to find a way to get away from Magiwyvern and Star Wyvern. They cast Sleep, among other things. Here's the Sleep spell from the Magiwyvern. This is a nasty walk, and you can see how much damage he does there. Manages to wake up and run away. So we have to keep a close eye on whether Tilo can manage this walk. He's actually most of the way there. He's got to get across this bridge and to the south, where he's got a tough battle coming up with a Golem Guardian. He is managing to run from some of these Magiwyvern. You could also maybe try the Sleep run. I believe the Magiwyvern is pretty susceptible to sleep in these situations. Star Wyvern, on the other hand... Oh, he gets away from the Star Wyvern, and here we go! We have a battle with the Golem upcoming. Let's see if he's got some good flute luck, because he's going to need it. I don't know how much damage he can do yet. I'm level 13 with the broadsword. We're about to find out. Hitting the Golem for 18 on that one. And immediately, and unfortunately he does not have a full stock of herbs, which you would really want to have for this fight. Because it's really kind of tough to out-heal the Golem with the heal spell here. And he wakes up pretty quickly, unfortunately. He needs this Golem to stay asleep for several turns in a row, so that he can heal himself all the way back up and heal. And he's only got 23 MP to spare here. So this is a pretty difficult fight for Tilo, and unfortunately it wakes up again. He's just not out healing the damage, and after all this, he may end up having to reset his game to hold on to this gold. So this is a huge fight for Tilo. Mr. Holmes looks like he might actually be making a play for the token. I think he's in that region where it's in the big swamp down here. And if you know exactly what square it's on, you can just go and grab it. Without any more... You know, there's no reason to visit the old man in Caitlin. But no, oh, I'm sorry. I had him mixed up with a different part of the world. He's on his way back over to the Rimaldar region. And BT is making his way into Hawksness, perhaps making a play for the armor as well. I did not think that these players would be able to get this armor this quickly. Unfortunately, he's going to take a death to the werewolf en route. This zone in Hawksness in the original game is very nasty. It's got all... I think all Sharlock enemies. I think there are wizards in there, Star Wyvern, werewolves. So it's a really tough walk to get all the way to the search spot. Tilo has made it into Caitlin. That is a huge development. So, Flame Sword and Silver Shield for Tilo. 53 minutes into the seed. He is done buying equipment for the rest of the game. He's going to stock up on herbs. He refreshed his keys. He is ready to roll. So the next stop for him, he's probably going to take an inn here and then take a turn to the south and grab the token. And then he can start thinking about making raids on the Hawksness Square for the armor and potentially diving Sharlock early for the sword if he wants to go ahead and round up. Well, he has not been in the grave yet, so he's going to have to go into and grab the harp. But that will be pretty insignificant with all of this equipment that he has now. First things first, I expect him to grab the token so that he can save himself a trip. And what is he doing? Because I do not believe this is randomized. I think we're going to see 70 and 40. I don't know. Am I wrong about that? Let's find out. What do you know? It's 70 and 40, guys. Yeah, so you can write that down. You can make your way into the swamp. I guess that may not have necessarily been clear whether or not that particular thing was randomized. But basically nothing in this seed is being shuffled or randomized in any way. Mr. Holmes is going to take care of the task of grabbing the stones out of the Stones of Sunlight Cave. He now has 2 out of the 3 quest items. BT is the other runner that has 2 out of 3. Tilo is going to stay at the inn. And now, unless he's not totally familiar with where the token actually is, I would think he's going to run away from this golem right now, and he's going to go directly into the swamp to find that token. But that requires you knowing exactly where it is in the original game. Otherwise, he's got to the chore of actually rescuing the princess and all of that. So hopefully that's not the case for him. And let's see if he gets through this werewolf battle, because he doesn't really want to take a death and have to walk all the way back to this region for this token. You want to get this out of the way now in terms of the routing. And Mr. Holmes, now that he has gotten the stones, is refreshing his items again. And BT is in a fight with the Axe Knight, trying to out-heal the damage from the Axe Knight, hoping that it's going to cast the sleep spell. And it does. He has blocked the sleep spell. He's going to use the hurt strategy on the Axe Knight. Interesting play here. And he's almost out of resources. And I don't know that he necessarily has any herbs. Oh my goodness, and he only has... Ugh. He does have some herbs. I think it's only 25% sleep, unfortunately, in the original game, and it is refusing to cast the sleep spell. He is furiously using all of his resources. He's going to have to do melee attacks in between for about 9 damage, and he does! He takes him down! BT, with a huge victory, grabs the Erdrick's armor. The second of our 4 featured runners to get Erdrick's armor. That is huge, because a lot of these grinds can be done without ever going back to an inn once you can heal walk your way around. Of course, he is going to want to find a town at some point to restock on herbs and to refresh his MP anyways, but that is a huge development. BT seemingly doesn't care if he loses this particular battle, if he goes back to the castle. I think he wants to go back there anyways. He's running further south. He is trying to run from the Demon Knight, though. I wonder what he has in mind, unless he's looking for metal slimes. Because I don't see him getting into Cantlin on these resources, and there's the death. BT back to the castle, and Mr. Holmes finally has keys and is on his way to the lower levels of the grave. So I missed if Mr. Holmes actually had run out of keys and he made his way all the way back to Rimuldar for that purpose, or if he had keys this whole time, but at any rate, he's going into the lower levels to acquire the harp. Not going to bother with the in-between chest. It's going straight for the very bottom level, only to get the harp. He knows where it is, and when Mr. Holmes acquires the harp, he will be the first to have all 3 quest items. And at that point, he has an option potentially, and he already has Erdrick's armor. He has an option very soon now to potentially go for an early sword dive in Charlotte Castle. It's one of the things that is a strategy in the vanilla speedrun. And it would, if he could get it pretty quickly, and if he could fight most of the battles en route, it would speed up his grind for the end game by having Erdrick's sword. And And it's looking more and more to me like Mr. Holmes feels like Cantland is not required. And this is kind of what I was thinking, is if you can do what he's done, and now you have the broadsword and the Erdrick's armor, you can round up the quest items and take a dive for the Erdrick's sword, and just finish the game on the large shield, and just take that risk that you're not going to need the silver shield. That can save you some grief to just avoid Cantland entirely. I'm starting to feel like that's Mr. Holmes' plan. He's going to go to the Staff of Rain Cave first, pick that up, and then he's going to go all the way south of Rimmildar to the cave way down in the southeast to pick up the token, or to trade in for the drop, having already acquired the token. Zarnax, meanwhile, in a similar situation that Mr. Holmes was in, but choosing to grind just a bit further with the ability to heal walk with the Erdrick's armor and the fact that he's defense breaking the Wyvern and the rest of the enemies in this zone. And he's already at level 15, so he could probably actually take a step south and fight the Wraith Knight zone. Somewhere around here is when you start to defense break that next zone. Here's a Demon Knight. I think that's one maybe that is a little more nasty to fight, but it's okay. He's doing well with the Demon Knights and the Wraith Knights here. Wraith Knight sporting the heal spell, of course, but so this is a nice grind spot once you do have Erdrick's armor and enough stats in order to chop these enemies down in a reasonable number of turns. And so it looks to me like Zarnax is not going to do an early dive for the sword at all. He's going to go all the way on the broadsword. Maybe he'll make a run to Cantland and upgrade to the flame sword at some point. He's already got enough for the flame sword. He has not picked up the large shield yet, but he can do that kind of whenever he feels like taking another walk back to Cantland to get the silver harp. Or, I'm sorry, not Cantland, Garenham to get the silver harp. He can grab the large shield at that time. So I'm curious if Zarnax has Cantland and the flame sword in mind, and not going to die for Erdrick's sword. I feel like it's pretty clear that Mr. Holmes is going to make a dive for the Erdrick's sword. He's on his way to get the rainbow drop right now. And BT, looks like he took another death. And for BT, he's already done with the major dungeons, and he's got the stones and the harp. He still just needs the token, and he knows where that is. And he already has Erdrick's armor as well, so I would think that he's going to continue making his way for the token at this point. And he clearly also does not care about the flame sword. I feel like BT and Mr. Holmes are going to go with the early sword dive and not get the silver shield. And it's still unclear what Zarnax has up his sleeve, and we saw that Tilo did make the Cantland run and has upgraded to the flame sword and the silver shield. And so from Tilo's point of view, he is probably going to grind all the way on the flame sword, up to level 19 or so, 18 or 19, depending on what the runners wish to go on. After acquiring the armor in this town, he'll probably just do the grind and then get the sword on the way to the Dragon Lord. And Zarnax is still not clear which way he's going to go with that. Meanwhile, Zarnax has just jumped out to a fairly substantial experience lead amongst these featured runners. He was slightly ahead with some of the tasks early on, and he has just put the pedal to the metal. He's up on level 15 over 6,000 experience. Mr. Holmes has been running around taking care of grabbing the rainbow drop and all that, and he's had to run through some weaker enemy zones in the process, and he's now just acquiring about 4,000 experience. So can Mr. Holmes make up the difference once he gets the Erdrick's sword? There's only about 4 or 5 more levels left to grind, and I'm not so sure by the time he actually gets the sword if he's going to be able to make up that much of the gap that Zarnax is creating here. He's done a very nice, efficient job with this mid-game grind. With Erdrick's armor again, he likely will not have to go back to an inn. And the number of runners is somewhere around 10, I believe. It may be down to 8. Is it only 8 now? Okay. I thought I saw at the time there were 10 entries, but one of those might have been our restreamer, and so on. So yeah, we have at least 8. Let me think, and let me see if I can figure out who the other 4 actually are here. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we have Beta Strep, we have Bobski, we have Unos, and we have WMD88 racing along with and against our 4 featured runners here. So Mr. Holmes creates the rainbow bridge with the rainbow drop, and he is about 1 or 2 steps away from some very difficult enemy zones. And I would be interested to see if he fights a lot of these enemies or if he's going to be running from a lot of these enemies in order to get the sword. I feel like he can fight the Demon Knight, but some of the enemies like the Star Wyvern, I'm not so sure just yet. So time will tell. And once he gets into Sharlock, he's likely to start running into some green dragons. And well, now he's running from the Demon Knight. So if he runs from a lot of these battles in order to get the sword, that's in some ways more time lost because Zarnax is fighting and Mr. Holmes is running. So I'm not sure how this works here with the early sword dive and the vanilla speed run, but right now it feels to me like this is lost time. Zarnax is accumulating a huge experience lead with just the broadsword. And Zarnax is about 3 levels away from go time. I started looking at the vanilla stats earlier. So on level 18, they're likely to have, as long as they're all going with the strength HP builds, they're all on level 18 likely to have about 85 strength and about 115 hit points to go along with, I want to say that's 100 MP that they're going to have. And that is pretty borderline. They would not be able to use the Death Necklace, of course, with 115 hit points. So they would be looking at, assuming they all got the Fighter's Ring, which I believe they did, they'll be looking at going with 127 attack power on level 18, which typically you'd want to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 120 MP. So with under 104 MP, you're going to have to make up 3 turns with some really superior rolls and some double attacks, and 115 hit points is not really enough to guarantee a whole lot of double attacks. So if they did decide to go on 18, they would probably not be a favorite to win, but it's technically possible to win on 18. Remember, we're going with Dragon Lord 2 rando stats here. So instead of 130 max HP, he has anywhere from 150 to 165 HP, and that could make the difference of requiring an extra level here. Level 19 looks like a clear go time because, among other things, they'll have 130 HP on level 19, which means Death Necklace will be in play. And they all do have it, I believe. So that's a fairly straightforward win on level 19. So Zarnax is actually not very far away from finishing his run, and he'll have to get the Erdrick Sword on the way. But it's getting close to go time. Now remember, Sharlock is not very easy to run through in the vanilla game. You have Armored Knights and Red Dragons on the bottom floor, and in the original game, they have some pretty nasty spells at their disposal to go along with the crazy stats and the difficulty running away from them as normal. So a lead is not necessarily a sure thing, as usual. It's often the case in Randomizer anyway, and that's no exception in this particular race. And Mr. Holmes has acquired Erdrick Sword, immediately casts outside, and he is in grind and go mode. I do not believe we will see Mr. Holmes get the Silver Shield. He is done, and he is just looking for experience points and levels. He needs to make up about 3,000 experience points now on Zarnax 42. Having the attack power advantage, maybe one less turn for some of these fights. How much faster are these fights going to be? Can he close that gap? That's a pretty big gap. Zarnax is close to level 17. Let's see. I think 8,000 points maybe is going to be level 17, so he's getting very close. And BT is closing in on the token square, and he knows it's on one of these squares, so he'll just search back and forth. It's definitely not north or south from here. He was on the right height. It's one of these squares along this horizontal. And there it is, the tokens acquired for BT. So he now has the ability to create the rainbow drop. And he is on level 13 now, so he can cast Return and go straight over to the Rimeldar region to create the rainbow drop bridge. Tilo has already taken care of that task just now, and he's on level 14, a little bit ahead of BT in terms of experience, with the drop in hand, and with the flame sword instead of the broadsword that BT and Zarnax are carrying. And the silver shield is one of those things that could potentially help him go on 18 instead of 19. The stats are still not favorable, but getting the silver shield is helpful in that regard. So we'll see how that plays out, and he'll also be defense breaking some of the more difficult enemies a little earlier on, so that could help to accelerate his grind as well. Zarnax is going to stick to this zone west of Hawksness. I believe he's still hunting for the Demon Knights and the Wraith Knights. And level 17 for Zarnax 42. And as we know, with level 17, we learn the Heal More spell. So he has just become that much more invincible. Potentially now is going to brave some more difficult enemies since he can heal more himself in between. You don't necessarily want to exhaust all your resources to the point where you need to take frequent trips to the inn, even though they do have the repel spell now, so it's a quick walk back into these zones now. But now that he has Heal More, he is going potentially for the Flame Sword now. So level 17, he does have some gold on hand. Or maybe for the Silver Shield. He's got enough gold on hand now for the Silver Shield as well. He is making the walk over towards Cantlin, but he may just be going towards for the token as well. So a lot of possible strategies in play for Zarnax. Meanwhile, Mr. Holmes is going back to Garenham for the herb shop. He's going to restock herbs. And what is his plan in terms of grinding these last few levels? Time will tell on that. He's got nothing left to do but grind and go. So we're reaching an hour and 15 minutes for this race. And everyone is starting to get close to where they can begin diving Charlotte Castle. Kind of curious to see if anyone will get sub 130 on this race. And Zarnax is going for Cantlin, and not just the token. And not a whole lot of MP to work with on this Golem fight either. But he does have Heal More, which makes a very big difference in the Golem fight. So this should really be no problem at all. He does go ahead and use the flute anyways, since he only has 2 Heal Mores to work with. And with some increased stats, the broadsword doing more damage than we saw from Mr. Holmes, who was fighting the... Or not Mr. Holmes, from Tilo Tilo, who was fighting the Golem with the broadsword on an earlier level. Quick work of the Golem fight. Zarnax is in with enough for the Flame Sword or the Silver Shield, but not both. And these equipments are in this shop behind the locked door. And which will he choose? And it's the Silver Shield for Zarnax 42. Passing up on the Flame Sword, he knows he's going to be getting Erdrick's Sword fairly soon. So a nice defensive boost now for Zarnax 42, and he'll be defense breaking some of the Charlock enemies pretty soon, if not already. Let me see if I can figure that out. On level 17, assuming strength HP, probably has about 73 agility points right now, according to my fuzzy math. And divide that by 2 to get 36, and then you add the defense score of 50 now. So 86 defense power is enough to defense break the Star Wyvern, the Werewolf, and the Wizard, 3 of the Charlock enemies that he may encounter if he wants to go in a bit early. Or if he just wants to hang out, let's say, within the town of Hawksness to do some grinding. Those types of enemies appear pretty frequently in that zone as well. So, and from that point of view, grabbing the Silver Shield at this particular juncture seems to make a lot of sense. And so do we have a Golem grind in progress for Zarnax 42 instead of some sort of Hawksness grind? They are 255 per victory in Randomizer. And so it appears that we are going to have a bit of a Golem grind for Zarnax 42, at least for maybe one more level. Right now, a question in chat, who's the favorite in this race? I have to think the Zarnax 42 is a pretty substantial favorite to win this race out of our featured runners. This experience gap is just so large. There's just not an easy way to make up for it when everyone basically is in grind and go mode. Zarnax does have to take care of the Silver Harp still, and there is some running around in some weaker zones to go to the Staff of Rain Cave and then on to the Rainbow Drop Cave. But when he does do that and he gets the Rainbow Drop, it's kind of en route. He can do that particular walk en route to Charlotte Castle. So I feel like he has all that kind of planned out to minimize the walking. I feel like Zarnax is a pretty big favorite right now in this particular of the 4 runners that we're seeing right now on screen. But as we said, the bottom floors of Charlock are very nasty. Red Dragons, if someone could remind us what vanilla Red Dragons can do, I think it's something that is pretty terrible. Armored Knights as well, I think, are no joke either. So they do have to survive the trip, which is just like a lot of our more difficult randomizer seeds. The trip through Charlock is going to be an adventure. BT acting as if he is going for his early sword dive now as well, similar to what we saw from Mr. Holmes, eschewing the opportunity to go for Flame Sword and Silver Shield, potentially planning on finishing the race with just the large shield and attempting to go grab that Erdrick sword so that he can speed up his grind. Unfortunately, you do have to run from a lot of these enemies on the way because they are just pretty strong for our vanilla stats that we have for our characters here. And a reminder from chat that Zarnax also doesn't have the token yet, but he's in the region. And he's on level 18, so I kind of feel like all of this from here on out, he was no longer really going to be grinding. He's going to be fighting as he goes to round up all these things. Like level 19 is a pretty clear go time level. And so he still has to walk over to get the token. He's got to walk up and through the grave. And then he's got to go acquire the rainbow drop. And go for game. So he is fighting a couple of more golems. I'll be interested to see when he breaks away from his grind, because he does have some errands to take care of here. And BT has made it through the top zone of Sharlock. He's in the middle zones now. Different enemy set, more difficult enemies in the vanilla game in the middle zones. They get progressively more difficult as you go down. But he has some pretty good amount of resources. I feel like he shouldn't have too much trouble getting to the sword. It's just a matter of how many fights is he running away from in the process, and how much is that setting him back even further on the experience grind. Zarnax is approaching 10,000 experience points, more than 3,000 point lead over Mr. Holmes at this point. Tilo and Mr. Holmes are in a fairly close race, with Tilo having the silver shield that Mr. Holmes doesn't have, but everything else being pretty equal. We don't have the death necklace marked off for Tilo. I don't know if he died before getting to that chest in the mountain cave, but on level 19 the death necklace does come into play. I think the fight may still be winnable on 19 without the death necklace, but I think it's closer and it's slower. So he may have either sold it or he never got to that chest or something. We don't have that marked off for him. And where is Tilo going now? He is kind of going towards Mountain Cave, but I don't think he's going to go for the death necklace. He's probably going to grind inside the town of Hawksness, I would think. And Mr. Holmes is doing an Axe Knight grind, which is a little bit dangerous. But just like in regular rando, they're fairly valuable. And he seems to be having some decent luck. Well, he's not going with the stop spell strats, so he's just planning on not falling asleep during this fight. That feels like a little bit of a gamble, but so far so good. Mr. Holmes grinding his way through the Axe Knights pretty nicely. And Zarnax is, let's see, he's either en route to or just came from the area with the token. I think he's leaving the Cantlin area and he's on his way towards the token. There he is, crossing the bottom bridge, and he's going to go into the giant swamp on his way for the token. So he's going to be rounding all those things up in kind of a sequential order. He's going to have to go in for the harp. BT is, I don't know why he's necessarily going to the treasury. What is happening with BT, guys? Because the sword is definitely going to be in the vanilla chest. If he had, well, he does already have it. What could be in the treasury here that's interesting for BT? I'm not sure. I don't even remember what's in there in the original game, to be honest with you. I think there's a magic key or two in there. Maybe some wings are in there. Alright, well, meanwhile, so BT does have the sword, so that's good. And only Zarnax is without the sword, and yet Zarnax is in the lead. So I find that interesting, because everyone else went for the early sword dive, like you'd see in the vanilla speedrun. Zarnax had other plans. Token acquired. Dropping the dragon scale, which of course we retain the benefit of the dragon scale, so no problem there. Return and repel, and probably en route to Garenham for the harp. He'll restock herbs at that shop, take an in stop, go into the grave looking for the harp. And Mr. Holmes... What has happened to Mr. Holmes' Axe Knight grind? He's going elsewhere. So what did we just get in the treasury from BT, guys? What was the idea behind raiding that treasury? I'm honestly not sure. But he finally takes a death. His Charlotte grind is over. He was pretty much out of resources anyway. And now the question is, where is BT going to grind for endgame? He has everything he needs. Probably not going to get the Silver Shield. Although, he did just raid the treasury. So that is how he's setting up his final gold grind for the Silver Shield. Okay, so that's interesting. Kind of a heads-up play if he does feel like the Silver Shield will be valuable to him. So that's the way to go there. He'll grind up about 15,000 gold. Shouldn't have too much trouble. He's still only on level 14, so the walk to Cantland is not free. He could always take a safety save here to make sure, just in case he gets sleep blocked by a Magiwyvern or something like that. And Zarnax has opened the door to go into the lower levels of the grave. These enemies right now are completely useless to him right now. They're not going to kill him. He's in no danger. But he's also not gaining a whole lot of experience en route either. And I missed he actually has level 19 already. I missed that he is on the go time level. He just needs to round up everything. So he literally needs to just run from everything for the rest of the game. Just rounding up the items now is Zarnax 42. So while he's doing all that, can Mr. Holmes get the 2,500 experience points necessary to close the gap before Zarnax enters Charlock? Tilo has fallen slightly behind Mr. Holmes on the grind. They're both in grind and go mode, and yet Mr. Holmes seems to have been slightly more efficient about the grind. Tilo is back in that same zone we saw from Zarnax earlier with the Wraith Knights, the Demon Knights, the Wyrens, among other things. And Mr. Holmes might be going for the Golem grind here. At 255 a pop. He's about 7 or 8 Golem fights away from Go mode. And he has Heal More at his disposal as well. So interesting that both Zarnax and Mr. Holmes decided that with the Heal More spell, Golem grind is the most efficient. Which makes some sense, and the inn is right next door after all. He's going to be able to refresh his herbs here as well. And we have BT with the Fairy Water strats in the town of Brackenary, and unfortunately getting trolled by the shopkeeper here, who just refuses to come to the counter. Ay. So he's going to grab some Fairy Water. Doesn't yet have the Repel spell, which is learned at level 15. So the seldom used Fairy Water Brackenary strats. Pretty cool. And that will make his walk to Cantland quite a bit faster. He won't start running into enemies until he gets to somewhere around where Tilo is currently grinding, which is right outside of Hawksness, and then that's at least halfway to Cantland. Nice little move. A couple of Fairy Waters. He's got at least one more, maybe 2 more at his disposal now. And Mr. Holmes is on the Golem grind. He's making pretty quick work of these Golems. But Zarnax has the harp, and he's out, and he's on his way to the Staff Cave. And all he has to do now is walk to the drop cave, take an in-stop at Rimildar, and it's go time. And Mr. Holmes has to get to 11,000 experience before all that happens. So I feel like Zarnax has a 2 or a 3 minute lead over Mr. Holmes, and Tilo Tilo is a little bit behind Mr. Holmes at this point on the grind. And it's pretty cool that we have 2 runners who have decided that the Silver Shield is worthwhile, and 2 that hadn't up until this point, where BT almost seemed like he changed his mind and he's going for the Silver Shield now. Or maybe that was his plan the whole time. BT is now encountering enemies. These ones here he can beat fairly consistently, but the rest of the walk can be pretty dangerous. It's got a whole lot of gold on hand. Everyone else seemed to do pretty well with their first walks to Cantlin, actually. I don't recall anyone losing to the Golem or something like that and having to reset and try that walk all over again. Which is pretty fortunate, because they all went on kind of an early level, 13, 14, trying to make that walk to Cantlin. Not a sure thing. So Zarnax is going to the southeast quadrant, to the cave here, where the final old man will give him the final piece to the puzzle. The rainbow drop. And Zarnax is still just on the broadsword, remember, so he'll have to make that detour to go grab the Erdrick's sword, while Mr. Holmes will not take that detour on his dive. And yet, I think it's still going to be hard for Mr. Holmes to catch him. He still needs about 2 or 3 more golem fights, and then he has to make the walk from Tantegel to the Rimildar region. So how long will it take Zarnax to make that detour to get the sword? Will he run into trouble on his dive? Here comes the final in-stay at Rimildar. So again, the level 19 stats for Zarnax. More than likely, 87 strength. Let me verify. He is... Yeah, he's Big Z. I think we just saw it there anyways, but... 87 strength. Oh, okay, we have it on our screen. Thank you. 130 hit points makes the Death Necklace possible. 106 MP gives you 13 heal mores to work with in Rando. Remember, in the original vanilla game, heal more costs 10 MP, but we're working with randomizer mechanics, so heal mores are only costing 8 MP. But that's partially balanced out by the fact that Dragon Lord has 150 or 165 hit points, as opposed to 130 hit points that you would see in vanilla. So on Zarnax goes for his final dive into Sharlock. Needs to remember to take that detour for the sword, and then it's go time. So this has been a fun race. It's been a little bit more nostalgic since we get to see the original map from the original game, and a lot of the equipment, a lot of the items in their original locations, just kind of seeing how the runners go about speed running through with some of the randomizer mechanics at play. Potential for fast gold grinds and that sort of thing, speeding up progress. But here we go. He's got some torches, he'll use a torch. And I don't recall if we're going to have a mini-boss. I guess we probably will. And I guess the mini-boss might be random. I'm just kind of speculating, guys. Not totally sure if that's been put in or not into this seed. So, just in case there's a mini boss and Zarnax wants to save those 2 MP for something like the sleep spell or something like that, or the stop spell. He's hanging on to the 2 MP by using the torch instead of using the radiant spell. And he is running like heck through the dungeon, trying not to get blocked too many times, holding on to all the MP pretty nicely at this point. The agility score in the 80s will allow him to run pretty well from almost everything. Only the bottom floor with the Armored Knights and the Red Dragons will pose a significant problem here. So he takes the turn and he's heading up, back up towards Erdrick's Sword. So this will only take him less than a minute out of the way. He's just got a few paths to navigate. He's going to grab the one treasure chest that matters here, containing Erdrick's Sword. And there it is. And Mr. Holmes... I was wondering if that was Sharlock for a second, but no, he has just made it through Swamp Cave. So he has to take the end stop at Rimuldar, and he will be going into Sharlock momentarily as well. But Zarnax has a nice healthy lead. He's halfway down, he's almost all the way through the second zone, and he's in the final zone now, where Red Dragons lurk, and here we go! Red Dragon number 1 is breathing fire, but the baby breath is not a big concern. The big fist for 37, though, is a little bit more of a problem. And correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like the Red Dragons have sleep as well. So that is not something he wants to see too many times. All these other enemies, no problem. And the Armored Knight, I think, has Heal More and Hurt More. Runs away on the first try. Bottom floor. Zarnax so far has held on to all of his MP. And by my calculations, he actually could burn a couple of Heal Mores here, because the Death Necklace is going to put him up into the high 130s, I believe, for attack power. And he will he'll have some room to spare. It's going to put his HP all the way down to 97. So from that aspect, it's kind of nice that he has the Silver Shield, so he doesn't take more than 48 physical from the Dragon Lord. But it's not seen too many Red Dragons and Armored Knights. This has been kind of a nice bottom zone walk from Zarnax. Coming up on where the mini-boss normally would be, but he goes right through, no mini-boss in this seed. Here comes the Dragon Lord. Death Necklace has been used, and it's on to Dragon Lord 1 as Mr. Holmes descends Sharlock Castle on the top zone. Thou art a fool. And Tilo's also reached level 19 now, so he's going to be making his walk towards the Rimuldar region and into Sharlock Castle momentarily as well. Zarnax will try and use some herbs here, but he's got plenty of MP to spare. Doesn't necessarily need to get every last drop out of this, but he does get through the fight pretty nicely. And so I'm not so good at counting this damage when we're watching 4 screens at once, but I will just say that he's a pretty big favorite in this particular fight. He's got more than enough heal mores to work with. He was able to take them all down with him through the entire castle. And it's just a matter of how much HP does Dragon Lord actually have. It's probably almost halfway through the fight now. Tilo going with the green dragon grind in the spike tile that's guarding the princess. And he feels like level 19 is not enough. I guess I remember earlier that perhaps he doesn't have the death necklace. So if that's the case, he is going an extra level here. That's kind of interesting development. With the death necklace, I think 19 is a pretty clear go time. Without it, I think it's still winnable, but it's interesting that Tilo has decided to go to 20. And Mr. Holmes is in the bottom zone, and Zarnax is nearly finished with this Dragon Lord fight. Oh, he's down to 1 hit point. But I'm sure that was planned all along. He knows exactly how much damage he can take. He's got the silver shield. There'll be no surprises. And down he goes! And I will tell you that no one else has finished yet. So Zarnax 42 is walking up to greet the king, and he will have first place in the race with the official SRL time of 1 hour, 40 minutes, and 11 seconds. GG, Zarnax 42 for winning the Super Speed Race. And Unos off screen has just finished as well in second place with a time of 1 hour, 40 minutes, and 38 seconds. GG to Unos. So it's a battle for the bronze. Will it be Mr. Holmes? Will it be someone off screen? Or will Mr. Holmes have some trouble getting through Sharlock and somebody else comes in? Let's see how it goes. Mr. Holmes appears to have made it all the way through with all of the MP, so he'll be a heavy favorite to win this Dragon Lord fight as well. Looks like Holmes did not equip the Death Necklace, so we'll get a chance to see how this works both ways. And if this fight goes well, then this decision by Tilo to get to level 20 seems a little bit dubious. But he's going for it with the Green Dragon grind. Using hurt more strats for the most part on the Green Dragon, so the MP is dwindling. But he should be able to get to 20. I'm less familiar with the experience cutoffs for the 50% cutoffs that they're using. Probably has a little ways to go, but no, there it is. Level 20 for Tilo. He's going to get another 5 power, some more hit points, quite a bit more MP as well. And he instantly exits. He knows that's go time for sure. And so Mr. Holmes without the Death Necklace is down to about 6 heal mores remaining. I think this is still pretty comfortably winnable even without the Death Necklace, because with 130 hit points, you're going to get your fair share of double attacks. BT also has decided to do the Green Dragon grind in the Swamp Cave, as opposed to the Golem grind. It's kind of interesting. So we've seen a few differences between our featured runners here. So Mr. Holmes down to 2 more heal mores. I gotta think he's just about done with this fight. He is not going to attack on 46 hit points, gonna heal up safely. He's down to 1 more heal more. Is this the one? No, not enough. Another swing, and no, it's not enough. Last heal more for Mr. Holmes. He's got at least 2 more attacks to work with here. Probably 3 more attacks. But down he goes! Mr. Holmes with 0 MP in the tank takes out the Dragon Lord, and he is racing home trying to get to 3rd place, but no, off stream Beta Strep sweeps in for 3rd place with a time of 1 hour and 43 minutes and 18 seconds, while Mr. Holmes will finish with an SRL time of 1 hour, 43 minutes, and 56 seconds. Fast and furious finishes here. 4 out of the 8 runners are finished, and 2 of our featured runners are still going for it. Alright, so we have BT with a green dragon grind in which it looks like he is not using the hurt more strats that Tilo is using. And on level 16, I was trying to think if he's actually defense breaking the green dragon yet. At some point he will be. You need 88 defense power to break the green dragon. There we have the stats, thank you very much. Not defense breaking green dragons just yet, but he is not going with hurt more strats. He's just fighting his way through those with the Erdrick sword that he took the trouble to dive for. And thereby trying to prolong the time between trips to the inn. Each individual fight might be slightly slower, but he's using less resources in the process. And we have Tilo in the second zone with Charlotte Castle. Level 20, quite a bit more room to spare. He's got, he can burn at least 1 heal more. We saw Mr. Holmes, probably more. He got an attack power bump as well, so if he runs into a problem with a red dragon or something, he can use the heal mores pretty liberally. He does have the silver shield, and he'll be defense breaking Dragon Lord 1, which is always useful. And if he doesn't have the death necklace for whatever reason, then he'll just be relying on the double attacks with 138 hit points. So pretty comfortable fight should be for Tilo, assuming he gets through this zone with the armored knights that he just ran from, and potentially the red dragons. So here's the bottom floor. He's making his way around. Fifth place is still up for grabs. Nobody's grabbed it yet. I see Zarnax in chat now. GG to Zarnax. Very nice race. Tilo goes straight through the boss tile, and he's on to Dragon Lord 1. Goes with the less conventional choosing of the no option instead of holding B. But either way, thou art a fool. And he is getting the stop spell from DL1, so that makes life even easier. Relatively full HP along with full MP. And we're close to it anyways. This should be more or less free for Tilo. It's almost guaranteed to get some double attacks along the way, and it's got plenty of attack power. BT closing in on level 18, continuing with the Green Dragon grind. On level 17, he's up to 86 defense power. Unfortunately, still not quite defense-breaking Green Dragons. But seems to be able to use a regular heal spell in between battles. And, which uses slightly less resources than using Hurt More every battle, and then still maybe having to heal up. That always helps to get a nice crit here and there, like you just did. So making progress through the Green Dragon grind. While Tilo is halfway through the Dragon Lord fight. Seeing some single-digit attacks from Tilo, but nothing to be concerned about yet. Not going to attack on 46. A little over a 25% chance of death if you attack on 46. Same decision here with 45. It's going to heal again. Should have plenty of heals in reserve. taking his time through this fight. And 5th place is still up for grabs as we approach an hour and 50 minutes in this race. And BT has level 18. And the stats for 18, you can see there, it's just seemingly not quite enough. BT does exit his grind now, so, you know, he is aggressive with some of his Dragon Lord math, and I'm curious if he'll try and go and win on level 18, or if he has designs on fighting his way down for 19. He is defense breaking the 4 easiest Charlock enemies now. He could pick and choose some fights in there. 18 would be pretty tough to win at. I think it's technically possible. You'd have to have some really good rolls and a few extra double attacks. But he seems to be going straight for the Rimuldar Inn as if he's going to dive right now. And Tilo finished in 5th place. SRL time 1 hour 49 minutes 51 seconds. GG to him on a race well done. Less than 10 minutes behind 1st place. And he has a comment that he went with the level 20 grind because why not? I suppose that's a good enough reason. So we have a couple of runners off stream that are racing against BT here. And that, I believe, would be Bobski and WMD88. Unless I'm not seeing something right. I think that is who we have remaining in the race. So BT clearly going in and 18. He is picking off some of the weaker enemies. He's fighting the wizard here. You know, the wizard does have hurt more, of course, because these are the randomizer or the non-randomized abilities. So not quite the pushover that it would be in many of our randomizer seeds, but still taking very little damage physically from the wizard. You can heal walk up in between. So he seems to be fighting for 19 on the way down, which will give him, I believe, 1 less heal more to work with. He's going to be on 100 MP instead of 106 MP when he gets down there. But that should still be enough. And he's probably calculated that in advance because all these stat tables are available. You know exactly how your stat progression is going to be in this situation. It's just all the vanilla games stats, which are all published and available. So probably realized in advance he doesn't need that extra heal more. He's going to fight his way down. Interesting play. Let's see if he can get it on the first couple of zones here, because the bottom zone does not have particularly great enemies to be grinding on, which include those red dragons and armored knights. He is breaking this green dragon. This is probably the best fight that he can ask for. Green dragon with the baby breath and the small attack at this point. So here we are through the middle zones. And it's funny to watch because since they're on 50% experience growth, I'm actually not familiar with how much he actually needs to get to 19. But he entered this fight, or he entered Sherlock right after getting 18, so I feel like he still has several more battles to go before he gets to 19. And the enemies are only getting tougher as he gets lower down into Sherlock. No longer breaking too many of the enemies. The wizard's still popping up. But the wizard is going to cast the Hurt More pretty often. And now he's going to have to run from the wizard because he doesn't want to be in a situation where he has to burn the herbs prematurely or potentially heal more. And now he's in the bottom zone. I'm not sure how he's going to get the experience now, because this zone is not so good for grinding. I think the Stone Man is in here. You got Red Dragons, Armored Knights. Let's see what else he can find in here. There's the Stone Man. This might be the one. He's going to have to burn the sleep spell and hope that it stays asleep. And fortunately it does. He can probably 4-shot the Stone Man pretty reliably, and he does 3-shot it this time. And yeah, so if anyone knows the exact number he needs, is it 11,000 even for 19? So if that's the case, he's not too far away anymore. Just 2 or 3 decent battles away, maybe 4. And the Armored Knight giving him some problems. This is the trouble with this zone. Lots of Armored Knights and Red Dragons, and there goes the Heal More. And I think once he puts on the Death Necklace on 19, this is still winnable from here. There was a little bit of room to spare. So now with some fresh HP, he's just going after the Armored Knight now, and he's going to burn through almost all of his HP again on this fight. So hopefully he gets a little bit of heal walk in between, and maybe it's going to have to burn a couple of herbs here as well. Good move there. And not much heal walk, and he's getting a lot of encounters. But fortunately the wizard is a decent enemy, and this will put him 1 or 2 fights away. So unless I missed it, 6th place is still up for grabs. Racing against 2 other runners off screen. Red Dragon, not what he wants to see right now, and there's the sleep. I didn't see this happen to too many of our featured runners so far, and this is a very clear possibility when it comes to these Sherlock dives with the vanilla monsters. And he does get away. He got put to sleep twice. And now, not using all the herbs, choosing to try and heal walk from 45. This is starting to get dicey for BT, and the wizard will not be enough to give him the level, unfortunately, only worth 120 here in Randomizer, just slightly short. And he's getting low on those herbs. This level will put him over the hump in order to defense break Dragon Lord 1. He desperately wants to see another wizard. The Armored Knight, though, he's going to try it. Oh, there is a crit, and down it goes. I believe the Armored Knight, correct me if I'm wrong, has Heal More. So he fought his way through a couple of those along the way successfully. They're very interesting. And now he should have enough resources once he puts on the Death Necklace, even though he burned at least 1 Heal More, and he's down 1 Heal More because he fought his way down. He didn't enter with level 19 magic. But here he goes with 11 Heal Mores in the tank. And did he put on the Death Necklace? What just happened? Yeah, no Death Necklace. I don't know about this fight now. I think it's significantly worse for him. 129 attack power gives him 7 to 14 damage range. Typically needing about 15 turns to get it done. On 11 Heal Mores, he's going to rely on getting a couple of double attacks in the process. So I think it would have been slightly less stressful with the Death Necklace, but he's going without. It may still be winnable. And just looking for some more double-digit rolls than single-digit rolls here. 14 max damage, excellent roll for BT. Seven to 14. So anytime he rolls a double digit, that's a good thing. Single digits are bad. And the more double attacks, the better. He's got a pretty good chance at one here. And he does get the physical, and he does get the double attack. If he gets even one more of those, he's going to be in pretty good shape. He gets a very good heal more roll there, but he's not going to get a double out of it most likely. Oh, but he does! A very low physical by Dragon Lord. So a couple of double attacks already for BT, turns the tide. He's now a pretty good favorite. He's been rolling mostly double-digit attacks as well. So he's got a few more heal mores to go. And it looks like we still don't have a 6th place finisher. So 2 heal mores to go. We still don't. I still don't know exactly how much HP Dragon Lord actually had in this seed. Could have between 150 and 165 hit points. Last heal more for BT. 2 or maybe 3 attacks. Looks like he's going to get 3 attacks to try and finish it off. Rolls a 7 there. He's going to get 2 more attacks. And down he goes. Congrats to BT. Get your GGs out. He's on his way back to the king. Just over 2 hours for the seed. And there it is. GG for BT. He's got an official time of 2 hours, 1 minute, 14 seconds. It was fun how everyone went about the race here that we saw. Not sure if anyone's planning on interviewing or if we're going to just kind of close it out. I guess I'll wait and see. All right, so a raid is being prepared. So this marks the moment when we are kind of celebrating and saying goodbye to our most recent tournament that we had, highly successful Dragon Warrior Randomizer tournament, standard flags from 2018. And we're kicking off with this race tonight, a series of weekly Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern races. There'll be multiplayer races like this one. The more the merrier. And pre-scheduled, so everyone will know when it's going to happen. And for the most part, I believe those will continue to be restreamed here on Randomania Networks. And so this was a fun way to kick that off. We had a special super speed run through a vanilla-esque seed here with some randomizer tweaks. And on future weekly runs, we'll be getting back to fully randomized seeds where players will have no knowledge of the map or of various monster abilities or item locations, and we'll be racing our way through to see who can do it the fastest.